Hey everyone, welcome to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from HederaCon 2026 in Miami. I'm Jen Sanasi.
And I am Sam Yu and Jen. We are here at the Faena Forum. What do you think?
We are here at the Faena Forum. Like I said, we are in Miami, an action-packed week this week.
Yeah.
Formula One just happened. HederaCon is happening right now. And tomorrow, CoinDesk's Consensus kicks off for a 3-day event. So all crypto, all excitement, all week.
Honestly, I feel like this is one of the biggest weeks in crypto that we've had in a very long time. Yeah. Not just the fact that crypto is now all over F1, and so people were talking and all the companies were in town, but we have HederaCon right now, which again is buzzing. There's people all over. Everyone seems really excited and happy. I watched some of the keynotes this morning. A lot of great stuff being announced. And then we have Consensus right after. So yeah, it's really an amazing time to be in Miami. Yeah. Anyone who's not there, you are missing out.
You mentioned crypto all over F1. Of course, there are several crypto companies that sponsor F1 teams. One piece of news I wanted to bring to the desk today is McLaren Racing joined the Hedera Council last month, so there's a little tie-in to F1 and HederaCon happening here today. And I'm looking forward to getting into the Hedera Council a little bit over our programming and talking about how the Hedera Council governs a network like this.
You know, there's a beautiful McLaren outside. I'm not jealous at all to see it. I also will say McLaren came in second and third, I believe, in the race. So just talk about getting some great brand exposure, but also being aligned with winners. I think we're in a good place with that. F1 and I think overlays so well with crypto because people love the energy, they love the speed. It's really, you know, it's a precision, it's an engineering challenge. There's so much about F1 that I think actually is really relevant to the crypto industry. It's not surprising to me that people come in.
I never thought about it that way, but I think you bring up a really good point. There's so many similarities when you unpack it like that between F1 and crypto, more broadly between sport and crypto. I mean, you and I have talked about that a lot, and now we're unpacking the institutional narrative here at HederaCon. Yeah. You know, you and I were talking before the program started. I think just a few years ago, we would be shocked to hear that some of the traditional finance names that we're going to hear from today would be attending our crypto conference.
I think it's an amazing time to be in crypto because I believe at some point, you know, the switch was flipped and institutions started to say, this is the future of finance. How do we get in and who do we talk to? A lot of those are talking to places like, to blockchains like Hedera and what Hashgraph is involved with. So I think there's just so much excitement for all the, frankly, traditional finance companies that are in Miami at this point to have these conversations. It's very exciting.
All right, let's get those conversations kicked off. Joining us now to start the show is Hashgraph CEO Eric Bassini. Eric, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for having us, and congratulations. I know, right? Yeah. Congratulations on the conference. 3 big announcements came out of the conference this morning. Talk to us about what we heard and what you announced.
Yeah, so we announced 3 amazing innovations today. The first one was the official launch of our private network called HashSphere. We heard from the market over and over that they loved Hedera, but they wanted a private version to start their journey with blockchain, right? So we said, okay, we're going to build this, and then we give you the option. Everybody loves it so far, right? Everybody here, we have like hundreds of people, and they love it. The first one. The second one is what we call Clipper, CLPR. This is a big day. I've been in blockchain for 13 years. This is a big innovation day. Clipper is cross-ledger protocol, and it's the ability for any chain to communicate with any other chain in real time without the need of a bridge. This is massive. We're gonna see the impact of this for years to come, and that's the second announcement. So we are really excited about this. And then the third one is the investment we made into a company called IO Builders, and they have a technology platform called Assetto, and they tokenize everything you want to tokenize. So of course they tokenize on Hedera, on HashSphere, they leverage Clipper, and now they're going to tokenize even more because we are supporting them in a very meaningful way. So all of this in one day, you know, I cannot be more excited, right? As a CEO, this is like a dream day for me, right?
Eric, I watched you this morning talking about this stuff, and I could see just the sort of palpable energy. Yeah. And I have questions about all of it. But I do want to start with HashSphere because it feels like crypto is having a moment where finally people are putting the dots together that we need blockchains They're really imperative to the future of finance, but we can't have everything be out in the open.
Yeah.
So what was the sort of positioning as you guys were developing HashSphere to say, this is the moment in time when privacy finally becomes part of the narrative?
Yeah, I think it was a journey over the last few years when we started talking to financial institutions, large asset managers, even regular corporations looking for payment solution, right? They said, well, we love what you have. Your technology is probably one of the best, right? Faster, cheaper, predictable fees, a lot of really good things, but they couldn't accept the public version of it, right? They said, I don't want anybody to see what's happening in my business. I don't want, I want to be able to make sure that the nodes of the network are limited to the US or limited to Europe, right? And then, so we said, okay, we have to do something to help them embark their journey. We did HashSphere, and we got 6, 7 clients already, right? We are officially day one today. We have 6 clients already, and they are really excited because that gives them a chance to start working on blockchain without taking too many risks from a public point of view. And because now we have Clipper, we can connect the public ledger and the private ledger with Clipper, so that they have the benefit of both without taking the risk of a public ledger.
There really is this debate in the industry, permissionless public chains versus permissioned private chains.
Yeah.
You're saying, a lot of the institutions you're talking to need private chains if they want to experiment in this space. Can you take us a little bit deeper into that? Is this something that institutions are thinking about, maybe one day we'll experiment with public, or maybe there's some progressiveness towards eventually getting to a public chain, or is it really just private for now?
I think it's all of it, right? So depending on who you talk to, some organizations are going to be very excited about the ability to do both at the same time, right? I can run a portion of my business on a private ledger, another portion on the public ledger, and I can connect both of them in real time with Clipper. Some of them are going to say, I'm going to start just with private because my business is different, right? Every business is different. My business is different, but this is a gateway to go to public at some point, right? We think that's a gateway, but they don't have to. If they decide to stay with private, they can stay with private.
Eric, I want to dive into how big Clipper is as a concept, because we've seen so many bridges get hacked.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of them fail. The industry, I think, has for so long wanted the idea of very quick, easy, cheap swaps back and forth, and just have it a little bit more secure. So as you were developing it, did you realize this is what the industry needs in addition to what you guys need here at Hashgraph?
Correct. So, but I have to be fair. In 2015, when Mans and Lehman, the creator of Hashgraph, started their journey, Clipper was already on the roadmap. They already said, at some point, we're going to have to create a technology to connect both ledgers without the need of a bridge. It took us a long time to get there because it's kind of a complex thing to do.
Yeah.
But now it's here. It's unlimited liquidity, unlimited access to every asset that is tokenized on any blockchain via Clipper. I mean, just think of this, right? You've been, like me, in blockchain for a long time. You're like, what does that mean? This is a shift, change towards large adoption of any kind of project. I call that the end of the war of the chain.
Yeah.
Because now we don't have to compete with each other. We just connect to each other.
Now, I got to ask you, there was a time when we were at crypto conferences and everyone was talking about user experience and user acquisition.
Yeah.
And I know that you've said, those are the days of the past. Right now, it's about compliance. It's about building real business. It's about credibility. We have about a minute left. Just talk to us about what you mean. What's the future you're building towards?
So, to be fair, it's both of the things, right? User engagement and user adoption is really important. That's why we did the partnership with McLaren, right? We are so excited about McLaren because that's going to drive, no pun intended, a lot of people to come over, right? But at the same time, we have to also do the risk management, the compliance, the right things for our clients. So anyone who wants to build on Hedera and HashSphere can join and start building whatever they need.
Were you at F1?
I was.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay, give us the highlight, best moment.
When they were practicing the change of the tires just in front of us. That was fantastic.
That sounds fantastic.
Right there. Yeah.
Eric, it was such a pleasure having you at the desk. Thank you for having us at your conference.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Eric.
That was Hashgraph CEO Eric Bassini. All right, I mean, I got a little bit of FOMO hearing about Eric's F1 experience.
I mean, I was available.
I was available too.
But you know, we had work to plan for.
We didn't get the invite. we'll be sure to talk to the Hedera team about getting that invite next. But shall we get to our next conversation, Sam?
Well, I do want to double click though for a second, because I think what Eric is saying, I think, is actually a very big deal, which we have to see it be realized. But the idea of what they're working on with Clipper, and that you don't need to bridge anymore.
Yeah.
Bridging was always a complexity in blockchain.
And a vulnerability.
And so if they really have figured that out, I do think it's a very big deal.
I agree. Let's get on with our conversations. We'll be able to unpack that and more as we have our chats throughout the day. All right, Scott Baugus joins us now. He spent more than a decade at the SEC before joining Coinbase as VP of Global Regulatory Policy. Hello.
Hello.
All right, how's your day going? Were you at F1? Okay, all right. So that's okay. You're here at HederaCon, and I think the excitement has extended from the event. We got to start with market structure and clarity. The big question everyone has been asking all year is it going to pass? I know we had some movement recently. Talk to us about how you're looking at that.
Well, it has to pass. We need it to onshore innovation into the US. The jurisdictions have moved. We need to catch up, and not only will we catch up, we're going to set the global tone for what regulation should look like with market structure in digital assets globally, so it has to pass.
Are you worried that going into the summer session, going into the midterms, that there's going to be some friction there, or are you pretty confident that we're going to get past this?
Well, I'm not a government relations person, I'm the regulatory guy, but I can parrot what my GR folks tell me. They think they have a lot of hope. Everything is set up. It seems like language in the various provisions, we know what the issues are, we know what the sides are. It seems like resolution is coming, and so very much think it can get done.
All right, so Sam and I were talking earlier about the conversations here really being driven by the institutional narrative. I know earlier this year Coinbase rolled out stock and ETF trading to all US users, tokenized equities on the roadmap. Are you able to give us a little bit of insight on when those are coming and how Coinbase is thinking about them?
Well, we definitely want to be the everything exchange, just like other platforms. Equities is the first part, so in December you can now buy regular way equities. And we're going to keep expanding those offerings to compete with other offerings that exist in the market today with regular brokerages. I think the exciting part is in the future is all of that needs to go on chain. The SEC is very close to giving the rules the road for letting that go on chain. And when that happens, I think we're going to see a Cambrian explosion of different types of use cases and different applications, not just in the US, but globally for on-chain securities.
Scott, I'm someone who really believes that money should move at the speed of the internet, considering where we're at today. It's sort of surprising to me that it took this long, but how does it feel to be this close to where this stuff is starting to be figured out 24/7, tokenized equities being traded in the same way people are going to be able to trade crypto, in the same way people are going to make payments across borders? It feels like we're in a special moment. Do you agree with that?
I do, and what's exciting is the technology exists. It's no longer proof of concept, it's no longer we can do this. We are doing it. Bitcoin, ETH, and other assets have shown the way. They operate at tremendous scale, and we can do the same thing with any asset. The technology is proven. It's just a matter of having regulators be comfortable with a slightly new set of rules of the road, the same way we're comfortable that your Tesla doesn't need to go through emissions testing. There are little tweaks that need to be done by regulators to allow this to happen.
We heard from SEC Chair Paul Atkins. He spoke about an innovation exemption, a sandbox of sorts, at the Economic Club last month. Talk to us about what we heard from him and how that's going to inform what we see happen with tokenized equities.
Yeah, so what we think the innovation exemption is going to be, and this is just by his public remarks, is how are we going to see securities on-chain, on decentralized protocols, peer-to-peer, between you and I, settled without an intermediary. We think that's going to be the innovation exemption. The SEC has done some very important things to get ready for that moment. They've defined publicly through statements what is and what isn't a security. They've drawn a line, what goes to the CFTC, what stays at the SEC. They have described how they think tokenization can occur. If you're a securities issuer and you issue natively, how do they think about that? If you're going to wrap a token, be a third-party issuer, how do they think about that? That was the second piece. And the third piece that was just a couple weeks old is a statement on wallets and how you can actually, in a self-custodial way, engage in tokenized securities through your wallet. All of those were the appetizers for the main course, which the chair has said he's going to release imminently, which is an innovation exemption for how all those things can come together.
Scott, my final question for you. You mentioned the idea of Coinbase being the everything app, everything financial app. I think that's been a pretty public statement. I think there's a lot of people who are really excited about that. Do you think to get there, the biggest friction comes from users understanding what that means, or legacy systems that have to be updated for us to get there?
Such a great question. And I was just discussing in a panel we did here about when will be broad adoption. It's when people don't know there's a difference in the technology. Like Zelle and Venmo, those types of apps are very easy to use from a consumer perspective, but they're very clunky, they're very inefficient, they entail a lot of risks, the settlement delays are immense, but users don't know that. And crypto is just the opposite. It's very efficient. We can describe to you in the nth degree detail how efficient it is, but users still don't get it. And so when we get to that Venmo moment, people don't know that's a stable coin, or that don't know it's a tokenized securities, that's when we'll be in that moment where we've won.
I got to ask one more follow-up there, just for folks who are watching at home trying to make sense of this. You said that those apps carry a lot of risk. What kind of risk do those types of apps carry, and how do we solve those in this new financial era?
Well, it's a great question. It's the clearing and settlement process for the correspondent banking system. A dollar may go through 3, 4, 5 hops before it actually settles. It can take multiple days before it settles, and there's incentive for the existing system not to change that, because when that dollar is floating in the ether, somebody's making interest on it. With digital technology, with a delivery versus payment process, that settles instantly on chain with no settlement risk, and that's the innovation that a stable coin or tokenized securities brings, is we can get rid of all that settlement risk using the technology.
Scott, thanks so much for joining us at the desk. It was a pleasure having you on the program.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, that was Coinbase VP of Global Regulatory Policy, Scott Baugues. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The need for a more interconnected world is fueling new decentralized technologies and new ways of doing business. Hedera stands at the forefront of distributed ledgers, where every interaction is not only trusted, but fast, efficient, and secure. While traditional blockchains struggle with speed and fees, Hedera's network settles transactions in under 3 seconds for a fraction of a penny. And the proof is in the numbers. Hedera is uniquely governed by a council of the world's leading institutions, ensuring transparency, trust, and decentralization.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from HederaCon 2026. Patrick Witt is the Executive Director of the White House Crypto Council, the administration's point person on everything from the Clarity Act to the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. He joins us now. Patrick, great to see you again.
Good to see you too.
All right, we have had some movement on Clarity recently. I ask you, I think every time I talk to you, when are we going to see some movement? We've seen that happen in the past couple of days. Just lay a foundation, set the stage for us. Where are we?
Yeah, so I feel like, a lot of times I'll check in and then folks are like, what's happening behind the scenes? But it's kind of like a duck. There's a lot of activity beneath the surface, even though we can't necessarily update people on where things are. So we had the big breakthrough, obviously, with stablecoin rewards and yield. Senator Tom Tillis actually releasing the language there, people getting a chance to digest it. That language has been pretty much fixed for a few weeks now, but the process behind the scenes of soliciting industry stakeholder feedback and making sure that everyone's kind of brought along at the right speed. So that's a big one. And then kind of turns your attention to the other remaining issues, which for our part, we've already turned to in the past several weeks. So the next big one that I think will be the big shoe to drop is going to be on the BRCA, Section 1960, developer protections. We've worked behind the scenes with Senator Grassley's team and the Judiciary Committee quite a bit to get that in a good place, and I'm hopeful that that's going to be the next area that we can close out. And you really look down the list and you start to wonder, what else is there? We're getting awfully close to being ready to move forward with a markup, and very hopeful that it will be a bipartisan one.
And Patrick, on Friday, Tillis releases this. Brian Armstrong comes over the top. Let's mark it up. So it must have felt pretty good to feel we've spent so much time to try to get here, and now we're really on the precipice. So just talk to us about that feeling a bit.
Yeah, it's always a question of how people will react to it that haven't necessarily seen the language. Obviously, the banks, the crypto stakeholders that have been intimately involved in this process, going back to the first meeting that we held back at the White House, and gosh, I don't know, it was February, March, I don't know, I'm losing track of days, but that feels like a long time ago. So you kind of know those people have seen the language, they're familiar with the concepts, but how will the general public react to something when they're seeing it for the first time? And usually there's a process where, in the same way that the people that were involved in the negotiations very closely started in one place and then kind of warm up to it and understand, okay, here's the trade, here's where we gave some, here's where we were able to stand firm, and where, we require the banks to give it a lot of ground. So people have to kind of speed run that process, the stages of grief, if you will. But ultimately, it's very good when people digest it, when they wrestle with it, and they go, you know what, this feels about right. I'm equally upset about it and also satisfied with it, and that's really when you've kind of hit the mark on a good compromise.
What issues are still left to be resolved?
So I would say at this point in time, it's probably down to ethics. It's down to maybe commissioners on the SEC and CFTC, and then some of the other cats and dogs, Section 505, tokenization. There's some different things in there that are, I'd say, if nothing changed, we could still go forward, but these are, some last-minute global offer type of negotiations.
The ethics piece really stole the headlines before stablecoin yield did. I want to bring up a finding from a poll that CoinDesk recently did. We surveyed 1,000 voters, and the poll found that 73% of the public opposes the administration's senior government officials, without identifying anyone in particular, having personal dealings in the industry, personal business dealings in the industry. And I would have to assume that maybe is attached to some of this discussion we've been having around ethics, around market structure. So how would you respond to that? I mean, when you're looking at the general public who have concerns about that, what would you say?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty clear from this on this from the beginning, which is common sense rules, top down. We're going to get behind, and as you saw with the Senate passing a restriction on themselves engaging in prediction markets, those kinds of common sense rules that are not necessarily punitive or aimed at one person or one family is what we're trying to achieve with the negotiations, and we've made a lot of progress. We've engaged with Senator Gallego's team, Senator Schiff's team, who have been the lead negotiators on the Democrat side, and I've been very pleasantly, not surprised, but encouraged by kind of the recent turn and tenor of the negotiations and discussions that we've had with them.
Patrick, I really liked your tweet earlier today where you're talking about how we need to get more developers to come to the U.S. I believe you said 19% of all crypto developers are based here, down 51%. It feels like in a country where technology is we have so much pride about it, especially with what's happening in the AI world, we have to bring more blockchain developers here. What do you think has to happen for that to be a reality?
Well, I think top of the list, as far as I'm concerned, is getting the BRCA, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, and the software developer protections that are contained in this bill passed into law. I don't think there's any doubt that there's a connection between some of the overzealous prosecution that happened under the previous administration and the precipitous drop that we saw in crypto developers in the U.S. So we're a competitive country. We have a competitive president. We want to win. We want to dominate in all these areas. We want to be number one. And we have to have the developers here at home building technology, ultimately American technology, that we can then export around the world rather than ultimately being importers of somebody else's rule book or somebody else's technology.
I want to just follow up for a second. I've spoken to a lot of tech folks in San Francisco who are still kind of keeping crypto over here, whereas AI is really focused. And I always try to say these are part of the same family of technologies. I assume you share a similar idea. How do we talk to sort of trad tech and say to them, you guys should be looking at blockchain?
It's an ongoing discussion. I think you see a lot of banks now starting to very quickly instruct their teams I saw one quote, it was like, go from 0 to 500 miles an hour immediately on this. So I think people are waking up to it. Those banks that are more innovation friendly, more forward leaning, have already started to move in this direction, but I think the Clarity Act getting passed would ultimately just throw fuel on the fire. But it's going to be a process. There are going to be some of those early adopters, and I think they're going to develop a competitive advantage through that. And then pretty quickly, their competitors are going to want to get in on the action.
All right, Patrick, I got to ask you before we let you go. You said recently that we're going to get a big announcement when it comes to the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think you said it in the weeks, and it has been some weeks. So I don't know if you could give us an announcement on the program, or maybe you're planning to give us one at Consensus.
I think I gave myself enough time to where we're still within the window. We need to coordinate with the agencies involved, and we don't want to front run them on any announcement. But there is good news coming on that front. Obviously, the executive order getting signed last year sets off a process where the agencies then need to go figure out, okay, how do we actually do this? How do we implement this? What authorities do we have? Do we have the right authorities? We've said throughout, and I'll say it again, it ultimately needs to be codified by Congress. But as far as on the executive branch side, just kind of our own authorities on the books right now, there was a big unlock, a lot of work that went into it. Again, the duck, a lot of the activity below the surface. And we're at a point now where there will be a good announcement coming out that we can move forward, properly custody these assets, centralize them, and it's important. I don't know if you saw the theft that happened with some of the assets from the U.S. Marshals that were in their custody. Obviously, we set off on this journey way before that happened, but it's just a good reminder that these assets need to be properly protected. They're different than traditional assets, and they require a proper treatment.
Really quickly before we let you go, you bring that up. We saw 2 huge DeFi exploits happen within the last month. Are those conversations coming up when you discuss the Bitcoin Reserve?
Not necessarily in the context of the SBR, but certainly in the context of broader crypto adoption. Anytime you see big headlines like that and exploits like that, there are going to be those traditional players that are going to be thinking to themselves, maybe not yet. Maybe it needs to mature a little bit more. I think part of what we're doing with bringing regulatory clarity to not only CeFi but also DeFi in this space, I think it's going to step up the involvement of traditional institutions, and there's going to be a healthy amount of scrutiny that's applied to DeFi protocols, and ultimately I think it's going to raise the game of DeFi to where it does arrive at the level where it can start to interact on an institutional level. So obviously very sad news. We don't love seeing that, but the industry gets stronger with every one of these, and what ultimately doesn't kill it makes it stronger. So we're hopeful that lessons will be learned, and ultimately DeFi is making progress in order to fully embed within the system.
All right, Patrick, we're going to have to leave it there. We look forward to that SBR announcement. Thanks so much for joining the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Fred.
That was Executive Director of the White House Crypto Council, Patrick Witt. All right, Sam.
I thought that was great. I thought there was so much that Patrick said that I actually want to go back and listen to. But also, really the idea of understanding that we're on this moment where things are going to start getting cleaner and clearer, which will bring more institutions in. It gives them really some guidelines and some opportunity, I think, to figure out how to build forward. Our next guests, this is the thing they're dealing with every day, so I'm excited to talk to them about it. I also love that Patrick mentioned security. I think we need to take it more very head on, that security is a challenge that our industry faces, and it's part of what brings in other people is to feel comfortable. But I don't know, what was your thought about the conversation?
I really love that Patrick brought up security too, and we're going to be unpacking security later on in the show on the back of those 2 hacks that we spoke to Patrick about. My takeaway from just all the conversations we've had so far is that our discussions are getting so much more mature, right? We're talking about the real issues that are really going to bring this technology to the billions. And that makes me really excited about being a reporter on the space and about being someone who tells the stories of the space. But shall we get to the next one?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Our next guest join us now, Hashgraph Chief Investment Officer Greg Bell and Global Head of Digital Assets, Treasury and Trade Solutions at Citi, Ryan Ruck. Hello to you both.
Hello.
How's the conference been going so far? Sam and I were just talking about the mature conversations that we're having, the very real conversations about security, about custody, the difference between public chains and private chains. Just talk to us a little bit about the conversations you've been having so far, and we'll start here.
Oh, there's incredible energy. It's great to have institutions coming together and showing the real adoption of technology and how we can move forward in an industry and provide real benefits to the bottom line for all the corporations globally.
Brian?
No, I agree. We're definitely moving on beyond just the hype, right? Like now we're starting to see real enterprises come into this space, implement this technology to drive real changes. I feel like the joke I make with the team, I'm like, for a long time, blockchain was like a hammer looking for a nail, but like now you're actually seeing real problems being solved.
And it's moving way faster than I thought it, like, it's just like accelerating at the speed of light. I thought it was moving quickly before, but we've sped up.
F1 speed.
Yeah, there we go.
F1 speed, exactly. Ryan, you've been doing this for longer than most in the institutional space.
Yeah.
We just had Patrick Witt on. Patrick was talking about we're getting so close to the clarity that we need in order for institutions to feel comfortable. How does that feel for you, like in your position to say, we've been working really hard, we're at the precipice, and now it's really full steam ahead?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. A year ago this time, we were moving millions. Now we're moving billions. Like, it's real value that's going through the platform, and it's real enterprises that are driving this. So it's like, and I feel like, in the grand scheme of things within Citi, like we're still relatively small because, Citi moves trillions a day, but we're starting to see massive adoption from a lot of our enterprises. And we now have hundreds of clients on when last year we had a small handful. That are solving real pain points in the industry, that are like, moving money 24/7, 365, regardless if it's a weekend, if it's a holiday, is really impactful. It changes the whole role of a treasurer and how they have to start thinking about their financial forecasting and the way that they move money.
Greg, let's talk about an example of this, right? Lloyd's Banking Group, Aberdeen Investments, and Archax has executed the UK's first foreign exchange using tokenized RWAs as collateral. That was all powered by the Hedera network. Talk to us about this milestone. What does that indicate about where we are?
Well, it's showing how institutions can really drive value for their relationships. So Lloyd's Bank is an incredible partner and a real participant within the FX business in the UK. And so to be able to use tokenized assets from Aberdeen on Hedera as a way to reduce the risk that they have in intraday collateral movements is an incredible demonstration of the real utility and value that you have when you tokenize assets. And you can now take advantage of days like bank holidays that you have here today in the UK market. When you can move assets in a 24/7 global environment, you're able to reduce risk. And ultimately, I think that's one of the great values of this technology, where you're able to optimize for the risk parameters of your business.
Don't people kind of want a holiday sometimes, though? Do we want to be trading 24/7? It seems like the answer is yes.
You're like, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
But I guess, Ryan, just to go to you, I mean, a change like this, especially, and you mentioned 24/7, always on finance, must also really evolve what the business model is for a traditional bank. How do you approach what the future looks like when there is no holiday, when there are no banking hours?
Yeah, the way that we think about this is just another tool in the toolkit, right? For asset management, liquidity management, that, if and when you want to be able to move money or assets on weekends, you're able to do that. You don't have that trapped liquidity that you were having like previously. So, one use case that one of our heavy users, it's a large e-commerce platform that is moving money Saturday, Sunday, weekends, and as small as a couple dollars, as large as millions, back to suppliers in Asia. So think about, typically you have batch settlement, at 5 p.m., you batch settlement, and then you have to reconcile on the other side. Alleviating all that operational, I would say redundancy to just completely streamline the process. So being able to rethink a lot of business models out there.
We heard the Clipper announcement this morning. Sam and I talked about it a little bit, but maybe talk us through Clipper, and let's take Ryan as an example. How might Clipper solve some of the challenges that Citi might be experiencing?
Clipper is cross-ledger protocol. It's really about safety. moving assets, we live in a multi-chain world, and we need to be able to move assets safely from one network to another, from private environments to public environments. The reality is we look at infrastructure, different companies, different individuals have their unique needs, and they hold their wallets in different assets across various networks. So being able to move assets freely with safety is really what it's all about. Why take a bridge when you can fly from network to network and do so with safety? And so we're really excited about this new development. We believe that that is the way that interoperability and some of the silos will be brought down. So many times we talk to institutions day in and day out, and they say, well, the tech that we have to deploy on this network versus another network is extensive. And so removing that, breaking down the silos, breaking down the walls, is really what is going to enable the mass adoption of this entire industry.
All right, Ryan, I know you need to go in a second. I want to ask you one question, which is, you wouldn't have thought 12 months ago, here's where we are today. Not to put you on the spot, but 12 months from now, where do you think we are?
You know, the vision, the future, as building the future of networks, that, you know, you talked about it, multi-asset, multi-network. It's not going to, everything's not going to be on one network. Multi-border, multi-currency. So I think that we're moving in that direction. You know, the first, I would say, you know, kind of leg in the stool was being able to get cash on ledger. And we have various forms of cash on ledger. You have tokenized deposits, you have stablecoins, you have CBDCs. Now it's getting assets. And then you're sort of moving up the complexity curve. You're seeing like tokenized money market funds, tokenized CP, but being able to have that fungibility. And also being, you know, you talk about interoperability. It's not just interoperable with digital assets, but also with traditional assets. And like that's what we're really focused on, is building that full stack where, you know, if you want to be in tokenized deposits or cash, you can do it instantaneously without friction.
And doing it in a safe and regulated way.
Yes, safety and soundness is definitely a focus.
All right, we're going to leave it there with safety and soundness. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Hashgraph Chief Investment Officer Greg Bell and Ryan Rugg, Global Head of Digital Assets, Treasury, and Trade Solutions at Citi.
Jen, we are flying. We've already been doing this about 40 minutes.
We have.
But some really big conversations had.
Yeah, you know, two things I want to say. Years ago, when I was on the Hash, we used to say the story about institutional adoption is really the road to boring, right? The stories get less exciting. But I have to say, now that we're here, now the institutional adoption is here, they're exciting, and they're exciting in a different way because it's really easy and clear to see how the technology is going to solve problems for all of us.
And you brought up a great point, though. We as a society almost built our lives around the idea that, okay, a bank closes at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock on a Friday. We can't even access things till Monday. We got to take a little bit of a break.
Yes.
And the concept around I can purchase anything, I can send money, I can transact as much as I need to, I can pay any bill 24/7 and have instant settlement. I do wonder how much that's going to change how we think about our financial lives. And does it do away with this idea of we get to take a break from our finances?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to take a break. I love to take a break. Sometimes I think it's okay to just chill, and it seems like we're moving to in the opposite direction.
but let me give you this. Like,
okay.
You know, we're all using AI for everything
Yeah.
these days. You know, when I am at home and I'm deciding whether I'm going to watch something on Hulu or Netflix, or I'm going to pop up Claude and see if I can kind of make something, I'm defaulting more to make something. I'm defaulting more to being productive.
Yeah.
And so with always on financial systems, I feel like the same thing's going to happen. Oh, I can make a decision that might be productive for me in the future, that might generate income for me in the future, that might, you know, take care of a problem in the future. There's something exciting about that, but I do wonder if, now it means we're always on the hustle.
Yeah, I really do like that perspective. And the last thing I want to leave our audience with before we get to our next guest is we've had a lot of car racing references over the program.
Yes.
I hope to keep those up. And so maybe if our audience watching at home hears anything that refers to F1 or car racing or speed, maybe there's like a little game.
They take a shot? I mean, what's going on?
I wasn't going to say it was a drinking game, but from the comfort of your own home, feel free to do whatever you please. All right, let's get to our next guest, the founder of Equity Lab, Jonathan Doughton, joins us now. Hello.
Hi there. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Now, why don't you just lay a foundation for us? Talk to us about Equity Lab. What problem are you solving?
We work on AI governance, and this is obviously a topical area. A lot of people are relying on AI for mission-critical work. And our solution allows you to create a new level of trust by bringing in cryptography, which, as we know and love, solves a lot of those questions. And our unique challenge was to focus on how to scale that. So we're not talking about, let's say, one model or maybe one agent. We're talking about how do you secure trust around trillions of agents working together in order to create specialization and a new form of intelligence.
And you guys published a white paper about sovereign AI and sort of how critical it is into building into infrastructure. Can you just give us a little bit of a taste of what that looks like?
So right now what we're seeing is that governments are recognizing that AI is something that is part of a national security strategy that they need to ensure that they have proper visibility and auditability and control over. Sovereign AI as a concept is now actually spreading throughout the world as one of the key strategies that every government is having to contend with. Our partnership with SAI is a new partnership that's grounded in some of the latest breaking technologies that we've co-developed with NVIDIA. And the idea is, how can you create AI factories, which are these large-scale data centers that either train AI or host AI, to essentially follow the rules that each country wants to ensure that AI can follow. And our solution now allows for a new level of trust and verifiability to say, here are the rules, and here's the proof that they're actually being followed.
I want to follow up. I have read too much science fiction about some moment where AI goes rogue. And suddenly you can't control what's going to happen, whether it's in a weapon system, whether it's in a social network, whatever it happens to be. So it sounds like what you guys are really trying to work on is trying to figure out how do we create trust, how do we create governance around these AI entities, but also how do we sort of, when we need to, get to flip the switch that says, hey, stop doing that.
That's
is that
exactly
basically what it is?
That is exactly right. Let me give you a sense. I mean, I think in the last 4 to 6 weeks, there's been a sea change in people's understanding of the scale of the problem. Right. The release of models like Mythos or GPT 5.5 has completely transformed what cybersecurity officials are believing to be that inflection point that you're talking about. Not about automation, but about threat that is now at a level of sophistication that we are completely unprepared for. It means that any person that has access to some of these models can launch adversarial attacks across mission-critical infrastructure just simply with the power of their own technologies at their fingertips. They don't need a nation state behind them anymore, they just need a strong model. And the question is, in a world where you have that level of threat, how can you create the difference between those who can be trusted and need to be trusted and those who have absolutely no trust or in fact could be adversarial? And that's exactly the type of problem that we're working on. This is absolutely not science fiction. I mean, if you look at the rate of change in which these models are progressing, at this point, we're now racing to keep up with the threat. And there's a very good chance, depending on who you speak to, that we may be at a point in which we're failing. And so these types of technologies that we've been working on in the space of cryptography, we know challenges around creating distributed systems, creating new levels of trust that are what we call like a zero trust model, right? And so this is the moment where crypto comes in and says, hey, we've been working on this for decades, we're ready to help, and we have robust solutions ready to go.
And then just bring us home, right? We talk about decentralized AI and the need for decentralization when it comes to AI, because we've seen what happens when power falls into the hands of one entity or one government. What's the balance you think we're going to strike? As you mentioned, lots of governments are trying to own as much of the AI stack as they can in almost an arms race. What balance do we reach, and what are the risks that are presented there?
You know, I think the question around models, which is where the concentration of power can exist, is definitely where a lot of people are focused on. I actually want to shift a little bit over and talk about something else, which is AI agents. Now, here's the thing. In March of 2024, we had an inflection point, and suddenly there were more AI agents than humans online. And there's no question that's only going to continue. And so the question really becomes now, how do we know how to create autonomy for those AI agents so they can select any model that they want? And as we discussed before, we can learn how to trust those agents to be, let's say, properly delegated by me or by a corporation that is using them for mission-critical tasks. And that's, I think, what's changing fundamentally, is that we need to decentralize the opportunity here so that any AI agent can bring to the table a credential that proves that it can be trusted. And that credential should not phone home to one of these big technology companies. It should be decentralized, in which in milliseconds, any agents can establish that trust between each other, and then be able to decide to work rapidly to address problems without having to phone home or rely on a critical big technology player to authenticate it.
Jonathan, we got to wrap it there. Thank you so much for joining us at the desk today.
Yep, happy to be here.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks.
That was Equity Lab founder Jonathan Doughton. All right, Sam. A question came up at dinner last night, and I want to bring it to your attention. Someone was telling me about an instance where one of their friends had deployed AI agents on their system, gave their AI agents access to their financial accounts, and that AI agent drained their bank account. And I have been thinking a lot about the future that we're heading towards. You know, do the current laws, rules, regulations protect us against AI agent activity, or are we going to have to rethink all of that?
I mean, I think as Jonathan said, I think we're completely unprepared for what's going to happen. I mean, very directly, do not give access to your finances to an AI
Never.
agent. It's
Don't do
not
that.
a good idea. You know, I'm scared enough when I give it access to my Gmail box or to, you know, the ability to control files on my computer. I do think, though, we have to say these are productive tools that are going to really give us superpowers.
Yeah.
How we get there, I think, is going to be important. And then what we do with these agents that make us feel more comfortable, as Jonathan was saying, versus the idea that we now have more of a loss of control is kind of the question that I think will be on our minds for the next 12 months.
Yeah, we're going to continue exploring that, I'm sure. We're going to continue exploring it at Consensus. We have a lot of conversations about agentic AI, the future, how the law will look at some of these innovations. But let's get to our next guest now, the founder and CEO of Zeni, Sachin Naroda. Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here.
Am I pronouncing it correctly?
You
Zeni?
are.
Amazing.
Zeni, yes.
All right. Lay a foundation for us. You are a builder in the Hedera network. Introduce us and the audience to Zeni.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So we basically built aggregation, mapping, and distribution technology on Hedera Hashgraph. What we do is we basically power the travel infrastructure for major enterprises worldwide, like a telecommunication app, super apps worldwide. Think of like Costco is offering you a travel along with its membership, or Walmart is doing that. So we do that for all of the players all over the worldwide. So we create a revenue opportunity. Also at the same time, we create the data integrity, the payments and settlement on rail. So we have been massively getting users without knowing them they are on the blockchain. So through our enterprise partners, we have more than 100 million users in our ecosystem.
Sachin, I'm interested in why you chose Hedera in the first place to build on top of.
Yeah, it was super critical. So if you look at it, when you have a multi-party settlement system in the world, you need to know what is the finality of the gas fees. When we were early looking for a ledger system, we didn't find any. The Hedera was, their gas fees was pegged to dollars. Second, also, large corporation doesn't want to get involved into securing the wallet keys, the private keys, and all of those complexities were pretty tough for them to just buy into it and start interacting with us. So Hedera was perfect, because if there is something goes wrong, you can modify the things. It's led by the council. It's extremely trusted. So it was pretty good for us in terms of exchanges, settlements, everything. Yeah.
I want to talk about an announcement that you made, the upcoming launch of Lollycoin and Loyalty DAO, right?
Absolutely.
The interesting piece for me was the arbitrage liquidity pool that's included in this, right? It's going to use AI and smart contracts to identify and acquire travel inventory ahead of high demand events like conferences like this one.
Yes.
And then resell it. Talk to us about how that works, because that's very interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. Think of like you're going to a Taylor Swift conference or a concert in Philadelphia or Austin. Austin has around 30,000 hotels, and you have maybe 200,000 people pouring in. So it's a massive demand-supply disparity, you know? And the prices of the available supply is going to continue to go up. So what we're trying to do, we have integrated 2 million plus hotels, 900 airlines through the Zeni infrastructure. But what Loyalty doing is we are building a loyalty infra, which is around a larger ecosystem where enterprises can just simply harness the power of getting to the users. So in this case, what I was telling you at Austin is basically, now you have a demand and supply arbitrage knowledge, you start pre-acquiring the inventory ahead of the time and distribute throughout the system. So there is a massive yield opportunity right there. So we have tested it with Cricket World Cup, our hypothesis was pretty much correct, that there is a huge spike in demand and there is a huge supply which can be captured and distributed through the network and the community.
The loyalty sort of question within
Yes.
blockchain has been going on for years.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of companies spin up, and I think one of the issues that they all ran into was it's still hard to beat Starbucks' loyalty plan or
Right.
Delta's loyalty plan, even though all of them get more and more extractive to the user
Right.
each day. So how do you position what you're building to ensure that the success that you want to create for the loyalty industry is lasting?
Super, perfect question. So think about it, current loyalty systems are extremely siloed and centralized at multiple levels, okay? Also the big enterprise, the major driver for loyalty is if you're buying a credit card, if you're buying any loyalty points, accumulating them, is travel as a redemption partner. If you have a travel redemption partner, people have affinity towards using those loyalty points to redeem them. So what Zenny is doing is allowing our enterprise network partners to launch their own loyalty system. They control, monetize, and execute at their will, not going to Delta or not going to American Airlines or going to Starbucks and buy the loyalty from them and offer the redemption. So we are making the entire playing field equal to all the parties and bringing multiple redemption partner on chain. So you're not owning a 1 point, but your 1 point can be applied to multiple redemption at the beginning for all travel categories.
Sachin, thank you so much
Yes.
for joining us at the
Thank
desk
you.
today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
That was
Thanks.
Zenny CEO Sachin Naroda. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking all about security with Kraken.
Introducing Hedera, a public DLT network for building fast, secure, and compliant tokenization solutions. Hedera is ideal for financial markets, where tokenized assets demand high volume and real-time settlement. The platform supports native tokenization and EVM-based smart contracts, while offering built-in token compliance and integrations with KYC AML providers. Hedera is governed by top-tier enterprises who each run a network node and are subject to legal requirements. Thanks to its consensus mechanism, transaction ordering remains fair and tamper-proof. No single participant or coalition can manipulate it. All transactions are fixed in USD, which is ideal for high-volume use cases. And there's already over 1 billion tokenized on the network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from HederaCon. All right, we are going to unpack conference security. It is very pertinent. We are at a conference right now. We're going to be at a conference for the rest of the week. Our next guest is Kraken's Chief Security Officer, Nicholas Percoco. Hey, Nicholas.
Hey, how are you?
Really good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. All right. We could always be better because we should know about security. We should know how to keep ourselves safe. We learned recently that hackers, bad actors are getting more and more sophisticated, starting to meet folks in person, and it can happen at conferences like this. So talk to us a little bit about how you're thinking about keeping yourself and your team safe at a conference like this one.
Yeah, certainly. I think oftentimes when you go to a conference, you think it's a safe place. And primarily it is, right? Not everybody that you interact with is going to be a bad actor, but you need to be aware, especially now, especially in crypto conferences, that there could be people in the crowd that are there for nefarious reasons, as we've learned. And so I think, one, when you're at the event itself, a lot of people wear name tags and they have your name and they have your company. At the conference, that's generally safe. But when you're out and about, if you're outside the conference, you're going to bars or restaurants or going someplace else, take your name tag off so someone can't spot you in the crowd and maybe target you then physically. The other piece is, even just walking around this conference, I saw phones sitting plugged in on chargers, like off in the side. I saw laptops that were logged in. Someone got up and was talking to somebody and their laptop was sitting there logged in. And so those are lots of ways that something bad could happen in that realm.
Nicholas, I mean, this event has a ton of people. We have consensus starting tomorrow. There's going to be 15, 20,000 people there. When I think about what happened with the drift hack, and I know we'll talk more about that, I do think that hack started with what appeared to be a legitimate company.
Yes.
And so, as someone who probably has a lot of people saying, hey, Kraken, we want to work with you, How do you vet through that stuff? How do you sort of, like, where does security start in the beginning like that?
Yeah, it's really tough, right? It's really tough, especially with attackers now taking that bold step. If you think of maybe a couple years ago, it was all remote, right? Everybody would just, they would email, maybe a salesperson would email you, or they would contact you on Telegram and try to reach out, and you would just build that relationship over time. Now they're coming up and shaking your hand. And they're trying to build that trust. And immediately, if someone comes up to you face to face and is like, "Hey, no, I know who Kraken is. Hey, let's work together. We built a product that does X." It becomes very difficult to sort of vet them, like, immediately. It takes time, right? A lot of times you have to sort of figure out, like, who are they connected with? How do you know these people? If for me, like, a good barometer is if someone tries to connect with me on LinkedIn and I have zero connections at all. That might be a case where, like, there's something weird with that profile. Like, it might be synthetic, it might have been created. So that's one way, just to sort of, like, as like a red flag. Like, no connections in common. You never heard of this person before, and then you check out their background. The background looks a little suspicious. Also, trying to figure out if they say they worked at another company. Reaching out to people at that company, like, hey, do you know Nick? Do you know that does he work at Kraken, or did he work at Kraken? And that can sort of help you vet out, like, those startups and things that are happening in the ecosystem.
Something else that happens at conferences is a lot of scanning of QR codes, Luma links to join events and side events. You talked about a time when we were all at home and online and we avoided clicking links.
Yeah.
That is showing up in person now. Is there anything that we should be aware of? Should we not be scanning QR codes? What are the steps we should take?
Yeah, I mean, especially when we're at a crypto conference, there may be QR codes that are meant to do some on-chain activity, right? And so that's where it gets pretty risky. When I go to a conference, if there is some sort of wallet interaction that I need to do, I will create a wallet for that event. So that I'm not, crossing over to maybe some other activity that I'm doing. So, because you never know, you can scan the QR code and, it comes up with this signing transaction, and maybe it's a giveaway at a booth, and you sign that, and it turns out it's malicious. And so you just really want to put a buffer between what you're doing at a conference and an event in sort of a semi-trusted, maybe somewhat untrusted environment. You want to make sure that you're not putting yourself at risk or even your company at risk.
I even think about, crypto conferences 2020 to 2024, it was like, get this POAP, get this NFT, get this airdrop for attending, and really was a way for them to get your wallet information, and at the time seemed to be legitimate. Now, when someone says, give us your wallet address, I'm like, absolutely not, there's nothing I'm giving here. I wonder, in a world where we are seeing also AI really be able to impersonate humans in such a scale, are there different ways that we should be thinking about protecting ourselves?
Well, certainly, a lot of the scams that happen, and so, like, even when we think of, like, our platform at Kraken, our clients, probably the top way that there's some activity that happens negatively against our clients, it's scams. And so it doesn't necessarily happen on our platform itself. It happens where they're interacting with someone in the real world, maybe out at a conference, or they see an investment opportunity. And they end up, having a trusted conversation. It might go on for 3 months, maybe even longer, and then they decide to invest. And so really understanding, like, that piece, and AI has been playing a big part in that. Deep fakes, having a Zoom call with someone, and it looks like someone that maybe you've seen, or maybe that you're connected with, and it's actually a deep fake of that person, or voice calls even, where it sounds just like a person that in the industry, calling you and saying, hey, let's partner, let's do things. I'm going to send you over some information. You open up that information, you maybe install some software, and that's the malicious target. But they're utilizing, deep fakes, voice fakes, all that can really help enable that type of social engineering.
I think there are probably a lot of people listening to this interview and getting afraid. And so what would you say to those people?
I think the biggest, way you can avoid these types of things is to slow down. A lot of times when I've talked to victims of these types of scams, or some malicious activity, they were jumping through some activity at a very rapid pace and not slowing down to really think about what they're doing, or give it a little bit of time before they react. Because a good sign, if you're doing a business transaction with someone and they're trying to get you to do something malicious, right? They're trying to, get some malware on your computer or compromise something, and you slow them down, the big red flag that will go off in your head is if they get really frustrated and angry at you, right? If someone's trying to sell you something and they're getting angry at you, it's probably a bad sign.
Let's think about some takeaways. So the things that keep you up at night are the things that probably keep us all up at night. How are the 2 or 3 ways you keep yourself safe?
So one, I'm very careful about where my information is online, right? I utilize a multitude of different tools that you can subscribe to that basically scrub the internet of your information. I actually subscribe to 3 of them in order to make sure that wherever there's gaps, that they'll just scrub information. So that sort of keeps a lot of the scam emails, a lot of the scam phone calls down, or one way, actually, I never answer my phone. So if you're a scammer trying to call me, you're just going to hit voicemail 100% of the time. So that's one way, but then also being just very aware of my surroundings and being very aware of, where my possessions are. I'm not going to leave my bag in the middle of the room here while I'm up here talking with you, because chances are it could get lifted and could get removed. So being just really a lot of situational awareness is what everybody can do, and you sort of apply that, and you can stay safe.
All right, Nick, we got to leave it there. Thank you for joining us and keeping us safe, giving us the update on how to stay safe at events like these. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
That was Kraken Chief Security Officer Nicholas Percoco. All right. I'm a little afraid. I said the audience is probably afraid, but I'm feeling afraid.
Look, I think it's in all of our interest to think a little bit differently about how we approach security, not just today, but in the coming future. I'm really hopeful that people are utilizing biometric securities more than ever, that people are using 2FA and MFA more than ever. We've seen and know some people who have had been compromised recently, and it is something that it's very real.
Yeah.
And I do think that Nick gave us a lot of sort of very good advice there.
Yeah.
But that's just the start.
Yeah, I think that was great advice. What I'm taking away is to just really slow down, right? You're never going to be talking to someone who's going to get mad at you for slowing down, doing your due diligence, and double checking on things. All right, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, more on crypto policy.
So this started as a digital artwork, but I thought it deserves to exist in the real world too. And I wanted to make it just a little bit more special. So, there we go. We're giving this away to one lucky fan. For your chance to win, all you got to do is claim this week's digital artwork powered by Hedera. Good luck.
Welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from HederaCon 2026. Joining us now are 2 voices shaping crypto policy, Chief Policy Officer at Hedera, Nilmini Rubin, and Blockchain Association CEO, Summer Mersinger. Hello, welcome to you both. Yeah, great to have you here. Sam and I have been talking about this being a huge week for crypto. HederaCon, obviously today, consensus for the rest of the week. Set the stage for us. I mean, what do you want folks to take away when it comes to the progress we've had with crypto regulation and policy in the United States? Nilmini, we'll start here with you.
Okay. Well, what I hope is that people take away that we're making progress. The Genius Act was passed a year ago, and it's really ignited a lot of interest in stablecoins. And now the Clarity Act is moving forward. Agreements are being made. So I feel like the big takeaway is regulations being developed, policies being developed in the U.S., and we have the opportunity really to catch up with what's been happening in other jurisdictions.
Summer?
I hope that people take away that there is a lot of progress going on, right as we speak. Things may look stalled from the outside, but we are busy every day. We're up meeting with the regulators, talking to Capitol Hill, and this is an iterative kind of bill, and it takes a little while to get there, but we are going to get there, and we're hoping for a mid-May markup and out of Senate banking, and hopefully we'll be on the floor this summer with clarity.
To that point, I think it was just posted on Twitter. Chairman Selig believes markup in May, votes in June, passing by July. Is that a timeline that feels realistic to you guys?
It could be. I'm very hopeful that that's a timeline that could make sense. whatever it is, it has to get done by January, because that's when the Congress changes. So that timeline works. We just really need to get people to move it forward.
I think that's a pretty realistic timeline, and I think it's exciting because it kind of tracks where Genius was. Floor time with Genius and when the president signed it into law. So we could be on the same kind of schedule with Clarity as we were with Genius, and I think that's exciting, and we could be seeing the president sign Clarity right around the time he signed Genius the year before.
I want to talk about Genius a little bit. There were some reports that came out and said, banks are kind of slowing down the implementation of some of what was said in Genius, the rulemaking. How should we be reading that as an industry? Is this just what happens when new legislation comes in? Everyone has a say. We got to figure out how the rules are made. Or is it truly slowing down progress, and is this something we should be worried about?
This happens a lot, but we do see it often in traditional finance. As they're trying to catch up with industry and the technology, there is kind of a desire to slow things down a little bit, but our industry moves so fast that trying to slow us down is impossible. We're going to move forward, and this administration too is moving at lightning speed with rulemaking, and we're going to see this, Genius in rules before the end of next year, which is pretty amazing for a rulemaking process.
Hedera is in a lot of the TradFi conversations, whether it's through the World Economic Forum or the Institute for International Finance, or we're just at the World Bank IMF annual meetings. And what strikes me is the long-term thinking in traditional finance and institutional finance about digital assets. So maybe things are slowed down quickly, but they have a long-term view about these being payment rails.
And Amelia, I think that's interesting what you're talking about, because we get to travel the world talking to different people. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are focused on what the U.S. is going to do first before they kind of move forward. But sometimes when you think about the IMF or what happens at Davos or whatever it may be, there seems to be a hunger for other people to say, if it keeps going this way, we're not going to wait. So do you think it's the U.S. really leading the conversation, or is the U.S. potentially at threat of losing the influence if they wait too long?
I think that the U.S. risks waiting too long, and we're seeing progress in other jurisdictions. They are moving forward. Singapore, Dubai, Japan, Korea, the UK, the EU, they're all taking steps forward. And you did see, before progress with Genius, you did see a lot of U.S. projects thinking about moving overseas. And that slowed down because of the progress that was being made. And so there is the risk that if the progress people expect doesn't happen, that things will shift.
We've been talking a lot about interoperability at this desk, and I think sometimes we forget to talk about legal interoperability, right? We're talking a lot about regulatory developments in the United States, but we're talking about global payment networks, right? And just talk to me a little bit about that fragmented regulatory landscape and what it means for builders who are building out global networks. What should they be aware of?
Yeah, I think because these markets are global, we have to think very carefully about how we're going to recognize other jurisdictions, laws, and rules around these markets. So, the first step is for us to get it done. We've got to get market structure done, Genius is done, get that implemented, and then we have to work on a process so that these markets don't become fragmented when you go across jurisdiction. There has to be some kind of recognition of in the U.S. for comparable rules and laws to ensure that these markets can maintain their global presence and the liquidity can flow across the globe.
I agree completely with Summer. I think that there's also layers of interoperability from a legal standpoint. So there's the regulation, there's the anti-money laundering, the terrorist financing, there's the movement of financial tools, but there's also tax and interoperability, the really dry pieces of interoperability that we need to figure out as this becomes completely mainstream.
I'm interested in, let's push ourselves forward. Let's say it's July, Clarity passes. How do you think that affects Hedera's business? How does Summer, you look at the industry moving forward post-Clarity? I'm really excited for what's coming next.
I'm excited too. Like, I think it's coming, and I think that having market structure, like passing, really unlocks the whole industry. Just like we saw Genius unlocking stablecoins, like this unlocks everything else, the financial use cases as well as the non-financial use cases with market structure. So I think it's really, really exciting. I think it would be great for Hedera, for people who are using Hedera, who are building on Hedera, for the council. So I'm really excited about it.
Summer, what are we going to talk about when Clarity passes? We won't have anything else to talk about.
There will certainly be years of rulemaking involved. A lot of studies. There's quite a few studies in this, so there will always be something to talk about. But I think with this industry, because it's so innovative, there will always be something new and exciting on the horizon for us to talk about.
Thank you both for joining us. It was a pleasure having you here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you both.
All right, that was Nomini Rubin, Chief Policy Officer at Hedera, and Summer Mersinger, CEO of the Blockchain Association. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a group of people, an industry, so excited about the law.
I mean, this industry is like low-key obsessed with the law.
Obsessed. I don't think it's low-key.
But frankly, they should be.
Yeah, I think it's high-key obsession with the law.
High-key obsession. Do you think, though, that again, does that risk being too wonky? So do we forget about retail? Do we forget about the average consumer if we are just excited about Clarity? Let's say Clarity happens. How do we then say, let's now use the fact that it's passed to create transformational change for the everyday sort of user on the ground?
Yeah. You know, consumer protection was something we used to talk a lot about. It was something we used to read a lot about. And with the advancement of these two pieces of legislation we were just talking about and this institutional era, it really feels like it has kind of fallen by the wayside. But I think it will come back. I think retail will come back. And I think we will start having those conversations again.
Yeah, I think that this is the kind of a conference that is meant for the regulator. It is meant for the institution. It's meant for those who are building businesses on top of blockchains, and they need these fast private permission blockchains to get there. I am very interested in how we continue to sort of lift that up. It's been a conversation we've been having for months, while also starting to say, what are the access points for the everyday consumer all around the world who have been told for years crypto is going to revolutionize your life?
What do you think it's going to take for retail to come back?
I think, honestly, part of it is use case. I think that the more people are utilizing crypto without even knowing they're utilizing it, the better. I also think when I think about our next guest, for example, we have to stop focusing on places like the US, like Europe, like Singapore. We have to go to the places that crypto can be transformational.
All right, let's go to one of those places.
All right.
All right. Joining us now at the desk is Frank Muti, the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, Kenya's primary securities market, and one of the leading exchanges in Africa. Hello, Frank.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
All right, Sam and I were just talking about the retail consumer when it comes to crypto. We've been having a lot of institutional conversations here at the desk. Why don't you just lay a foundation for us? Talk to us about the state of crypto over in Kenya. What's the divide between retail and institutional adoption?
So the first thing to say is Kenya actually has been one of the top countries in Africa that has adopted crypto for quite a while now. But the biggest change is earlier this year, the country passed a law that brings crypto, stablecoins, tokenized securities, CBDCs, and regulation. That law is now in place. And then what is now happening is the development of the regulations and the rules that will operationalize that law in order for then the market to be fully regulated. But currently the biggest adoption is really by retail investors. And primarily that's been the case when you look at the use cases that retail investors are actually using crypto for, whether it's investment, whether it's in managing against inflation, whether it's in being able to move payments with less friction across the continent or outside the continent as well. And of course, also some element of hedging against other opportunities. What we are thinking though is that going forward, as more and more visibility, awareness, and regulation comes into this, then you'll find more institutional investors coming into the asset class.
So retail first and then institutional.
That's the current adoption trend in Kenya for sure.
Frank, you said a lot there that I want to talk about. I'm really interested in how the everyday person in Kenya is using crypto. Because we heard, when we were in Korea, we heard that a good portion of Korean adults use crypto as an investment tool to sort of just get a little bit of extra yield or edge that really helps make their lives better. Similarly, we've spoken to a lot of people who have businesses they're building in Africa, and they're saying, oh, whether I'm a creator or an entrepreneur, I want to get access to a global market.
Sure.
And so this is an easier way than maybe the banks are allowing them to be.
Yeah.
Right? So how are most people viewing and then using crypto on the ground in Kenya?
Okay. So the first thing to say is there is a financial inclusion play. Okay? People who are either unbanked, people who didn't have necessarily access to financial services, so they are adopting crypto and using crypto either to make payments, to actually use it as an investment, but also, of course, to use it as a savings type method. I think the second thing that is important to mention is that when you're in countries, some of which not Kenya, but some of the countries on our continent, where inflation is very, very rampant, and then you're seeing retail investors actually piling into crypto as a way to hedge and manage against inflation. Okay, but the biggest one that we've seen is where you're seeing retail investors using it as a method for reducing friction on payments. Okay, why? If you think about what it takes to actually move money across the continent, it's actually a very expensive affair. And also some of the requirements around the amount of, for example, shillings, which is the currency we use in my country, that you need to hold for that transaction to actually make financial sense. You start seeing a lot of people actually being locked out from the system. So crypto has brought financial inclusion. It's definitely brought investment opportunities that would otherwise not be available. It's helped facilitate easier and cheaper payments if you bundle it with stablecoins as an example. But I think going forward, it's also a way for businesses, especially smaller businesses, to access global capital markets. Because some of the capital markets on our continent are not as deep and are not as accessible to small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's opened up a whole new world of enablement, of inclusion, and of course of opportunity.
When we talk about crypto, what cryptos are we talking about? I'm assuming stablecoins.
Well, in the larger digital assets space, crypto in the primary sense, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, all that. Stablecoins for sure, especially for purpose of payments and things like that, and also for investment. But we are now seeing also a movement around tokenized securities. So moving away from the primarily crypto space, but now we're getting into tokenized securities. Our country is also talking about CBDCs, is looking at tokenized deposits. So it's the whole area on digital assets, of which crypto is one of the components.
I've been reading about what you're doing with Sub-Saharan Africa, with the Kenya Digital Exchange.
Yeah.
There was 205 billion in on-chain value last year, 52% jump, which is amazing. There's a lot of momentum there. How much more can you do? Where is it going? Is this the kind of thing where you're going to see other areas within Africa also start to adopt what you're doing?
Okay. So the first thing is to say the exchange, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, one of the first things we did is we said we want to be able to enable this asset class at scale to everybody. And the first thing we did is we joined the Hedera Governing Council. We are a member now in the Hedera Governing Council with a view to enabling these use cases that we have in mind to actually become a reality. So the first thing we've said is we are going to set up digital assets exchange, so that the local population can actually readily access these crypto digital assets and all these other tokenized instruments and trade them, invest in them. So we are enabling that, and we are going to make sure that that becomes a reality in the course of this year. The second thing we are looking at is curating a stablecoin that is specific for use in our part of the world, over and above the global ones that are already readily available. You know, Tethers, the Binance, etc. What we are seeing though is when we have conversations with Hedera and the members within the Hedera network, there are other use cases that are coming out of that. One of them is tokenization of real world assets, which will enable also smaller businesses to actually, as I said, access global capital. Ours is a story of enablement. Okay? Ours is a story of enablement. If I give you another example, sustainability, where we are looking to issue tokens on the Hedera network that enable capital to flow to the climate change agenda, the sustainability agenda. And we want to do that, of course, in a regulated, licensed manner, of which for ourselves, the platform we manage is licensed and regulated. But more importantly, to build a platform that aligns with global standards, so that anyone around the world can actually interface with our platform built on an Hedera platform, knowing that that platform meets global standards, just like they would out here in the US where we are today. So it's a story of enablement, inclusion, and of course opportunity. Whichever way you look at it, that's what it comes down to.
All right, we got to go. I want to ask you one quick thing before we let you go. I lived in South Africa for some years, obviously a different country than Kenya, but when I lived there, I was really surprised by the speed at financial innovation. I looked at M-Pesa, I looked at what was happening with payments, how the underbanked was being addressed with solutions outside of crypto. What is it about the African continent, you think, that makes it so innovative at such a speed, so much faster than innovation I see sitting here in the United States?
It's a good point you raise, John. You see, number one, of course, necessity is the mother of invention. And so in a circumstance where most of the solutions, for example, that are taken for granted in other parts of the world are not there, then the market by default has to innovate to close the gap. And number two is we have a very young population in the continent, the youngest population in the entire planet. These young people are very innovative. They are hungry to solve solutions, and they are actually very, very open to embracing new technology. So actually, when I move around and meet with other entities that are in this space, what you're finding is Africa is a fantastic continent to interface with new technology, to bring innovation to market, to solve for real solutions, real challenges that actually are very impactful. So if you combine gaps that are already existing in the market that need innovation, you combine that with a very young population that is quick to embrace new technology, and then you look at the impact of those solutions, then it's rather obvious why a continent like ours is actually quick to embrace new technology, quick to innovate, very easy to jump legacy technologies and move to the newest emerging technologies, but also to see that impacting people's lives in real sense. And I think that trend will continue to accelerate as the population is still very young. The challenges are still very significant, and the government also, most governments in Africa are also very open to embracing innovation. So from a policy and regulatory perspective, you're seeing a lot of openness to partner and to innovate.
All right, Frank, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Frank Mwiti, the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. everyone. Welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We are at HederaCon. We are now joined by business fellow and blockchain strategist at FedEx, Dale Christie. Dale, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, I've been looking forward to this conversation all day. Some people who are watching might be thinking, what is FedEx doing in blockchain? Set the stage for us. Talk to us about how FedEx is looking at the technology.
Well, I led the first use case of blockchain at FedEx in 2017. So it's not recent, I assure you. And since 2018, I've been leading the Web3 and blockchain area. We used it originally to solve a quality issue, a three-party scenario where a receiver did one thing and a shipper did something else, and we were the carrier, and we were talking past each other. And we ended up with a couple of $1 million of claims issues, and the other party had a $25 million issue. And basically, I used it to try to create a common language. We were trying to say, can the three of us get on the same wavelength and figure out what's actually happening? And it really was a data issue. It wasn't like a true loss issue where something was getting stolen or something like that. And so that was the first use case. We've had multiple other use cases since that time. But we also realized that we cast a very big shadow in our world, and we go to 220 countries and territories. We go everywhere in the world that you can go. And if I were to share a slide from a presentation, my very first slide is from space, which is let me take you where you are in this room or on this video screen. Let me take you up to kind of our office view and show you that. And at that level, it's going to have to all come together. It's not about an individual FedEx branded product or any of these individual use cases. It's going to have to be strategic and scalable. We think it's got to be open foundationally. But all the dots are all going to connect. It's not, there's no FedEx at that level or company or industry, and data knows no geographic borders.
Dale, I'm very interested because, I was speaking to, I think it was IBM in 2018. Yep. And they had a food security blockchain that they were really focusing on. You were working on in 2017. You guys are the supply chain in many ways, and the idea that to say, hey, a package was checked in, a package was delivered, it was tracked here, should be an immutable asset on a blockchain. It makes a lot of sense. Was it just too early back in 2017? Now, where we're at, there's a lot of folks looking at supply chain and blockchains and proof of trust. So, sort of, where are we now in your idea?
I don't think the idea has actually changed. So I think maturity might have been one of the issues from that point of view. We actually built a global supply chain blockchain in 2018, and it worked. And only then do we realize it wouldn't scale. So you can do a number of things at that point. The response to that was, under what set of circumstances might it scale, or what we might say today is what must be true. Yeah. We really felt at that point it needed to be open. We couldn't get people to pay us to use our blockchain. UPS wouldn't pay us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was certainly ahead of its time from that point of view for a company like FedEx to be saying, wait a second, we actually think open is where this has got to go. And so we were founding members of the Blockchain and Transport Alliance, and that's now part of the Global Blockchain Business Council. I'm chairman of that, but FedEx and UPS were founding members, and we were focused on, and still are focused on, open, harmonized, and interoperable standards. So again, these digital rails, these open rails, we think are going to be critical. And so what has happened since that time? I think we are at this very unique inflection point. You see that a lot better than I do. You've got your fingers on this pulse much more than I do. I'm up kind of in the International Space Station level, but with the legislation, we work with U.S. Customs. The future of that is verifiable credentials. I mean, there's so many things happening. I mentioned on a panel this morning, I think it was in 2018, I was in D.C. at the Congressional Blockchain Education Day, and we were explaining office to office to office what this stuff was. That's obviously not the case anymore, right? So there's so much movement, and it's about time. And yet, from our point of view, it's still got to come together, right? I mean, all these people at HederaCon can all be successful, but if it's not strategic and scalable for companies and entities like ours that truly are focused on global commerce, it's still not. We're still kind of getting there, trying to get there.
You mentioned that conversation between open networks and closed ones, and we've been having a conversation here about permissioned and permissionless networks. Talk to us about some of the trade-offs you were weighing when you said, you know what, actually, this needs to be open.
Actually, again, I'm on the business and strategy side and not the technical side, so I will tell you there was no discussion about it. We didn't get into the deep, dark nuances of it in 2018. We simply stayed above it and said, look back at other technologies. How have they scaled? What is that? And we stopped at that point. And it was like, okay, well, we don't need to go deeper. We have history on our side. We can see what's going on. And honestly, we haven't changed. We're still technology agnostic, and we still believe that there's going to be an open foundational layer, just like the internet. I mean, until we got to TCP, IP, HTTP, it didn't work. You wanted me on your website or on your browser or whatever, and now we don't care. You just want me on your website, right? You just want the clicks and the views and the shopping cart, and we think it's got to be the same thing. We think it's an and, right? Two things can be true. We think there needs to be open foundational layers, and then we can all build on top of it.
And FedEx has joined the Hedera Council, which means when you say we need to figure out how all these people can be successful, but also how we can scale and utilize this.
Correct.
You now have a little bit of a say in that.
Right.
Right. So how do you approach kind of a partner like Hedera and saying, here's what a business like ours, which again, 24/7 global, really needs to do in order for us to be able to utilize this technology?
Well, the short response is the future of global supply chains is digital. So there's a rear view mirror of 3,000 or so years of paper and papyrus and clay tablets, and the windshield is all digital. And so we start with that point in mind, right? If that's the case, so if we assume for a second that I'm correct, and we plant that flag out on the horizon and say, that's where it's going, and we come back to this booth right here and say, how do we get there? There's a handful of steps along the way. One is digital identity. I am who I say I am, and I can prove that, right? But beyond that, other than the thousands of data points about any package moving and the couple of trillion a year that are moving those packages, there's thousands of data points. We think there's only a handful that are actually important, really, really important. Identity, ownership, you owned it until I owned it, it crossed a border. There's literally that, just a really small number, and we think that right now we continue to re-verify those things all the way around the world through 24 documents. If you can say, I am who I say I am, and it now changed ownership to her, and you don't have to re-verify that every single time, we think that's critical. And it's essentially kind of a notarization process. So think of a notary from that, or an attestation. We think that a network like Hedera can be a great example of something like that, where that can be a place where we can all go neutrally and not have to keep verifying that this thing moves all the way around the world.
Dale, thanks so much for joining us at the desk. It was a pleasure. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So nice to meet you.
That was Dale Christie, business fellow and blockchain strategist at FedEx. Sam, Dale said something that I think was important.
Go on.
And it was, when they were trying to figure out or weighing the risks of open and closed systems, they weren't getting deep and dark into the technology. They were just looking at the business problem they had and looking at what the best solution was. And I think that's something we forget in this industry sometimes.
I think there is... What Dale said that really struck me was open source, which is obviously having a moment right now. The fact that he said there's a blockchain council that was FedEx and UPS.
Yes.
Right? Both building something together, I think is pretty special and magical. Again, we would love to see more of that, in the same way that we have Ryan Rugg from Citi earlier, and we can also talk to JP Morgan, and we know they're both working on similar problems. There was a world where everything was siloed and your moat was the silo. Now it feels like people are saying, no, we have to not build, so every single time we need something, we have to base something on an existing standard, and we get to write that standard by being part of a council. I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, and not all problems can be solved by yourself. They can't be solved in silos. Sometimes we have to come together and work together to solve big challenges. All right, let's get to our next guest. Joining us now is the Global Head of Strategy for digital economy at Moody's Ratings, Rajiv Bamra. Rajiv, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
All right, talk to us about HederaCon. What is Moody's doing here? What do you hope to walk away from this conference having achieved?
So over the past few years, a lot of so-called crypto conferences are turning institutional. We are seeing a lot of institutions now getting into the game, trying to understand how digital innovation or digital finance technology and decentralized finance technology can migrate and integrate into the traditional finance rails and help fill the gap that exists because of the frictions that are known and data has been collected over the years, where you can actually start pricing the risk into your models by understanding those novel risks more better and make the entire process more streamlined over a period of time. So at HederaCon, we are here to share what we've been doing over the past few months and few years, what our role as an institution in this evolving digital economy is, and what the other institutions and other market and participants, especially the frontiers, are actually evolving and innovating in the space, which can be used and applied in the traditional finance space as well.
And last month, you published your first ever stablecoin rating methodology. Why don't you explain a little bit of that to us?
Yes, so there has always been a rating or a score available for a stablecoin in the ecosystem and in the market. But there is a difference between an underlying credit rating or credit risk and the point-in-time score of a stablecoin. So in our view, stablecoin is a digital settlement asset more than just like a digital cash. But what it does is it carries a promise to allow the holder to redeem their dollar on par and on demand. So the idea that we had always was that because it carries a promise, that promise has a credit risk. Because if you're carrying a $20 bill cash, that is a bearer instrument, direct liability of the central bank. But now a stable coin is actually issued by a private technology provider or a private institution, and suddenly they have the holder, or they have a promise to the holder about holding the value of the stable coin for the amount that the holder is currently having in their wallet. So we decided that we should have a credit rating specifically for stable coins to evaluate bottom-up risk for the stable coin as an asset itself. So the quality of the underlying assets is very important. The market value risk of those underlying assets, because they trade in the secondary markets, and when you go to redeem at par, or if there is ever a run, the value of those underlying assets may not be one-to-one. So it's important to understand how those risks are being mitigated. And additionally, besides that, there are various operational risks that come into play. There are more counterparty risks than anybody can imagine than in the traditional finance space. There's technology risk because stable coins are native to blockchain technology, and to understand how the governance mechanisms, the control around the smart contracts that are executing it, the burn and mint mechanism is very important for us to have a well-educated view of the stablecoin itself, because if the institutions are going to start using it, or if I as a retail investor want to invest in stablecoins or hold a stablecoin, I should know that the stablecoin that I hold will be able to redeem at par when I want it to.
What are the requirements for getting a Moody's rating under the methodology?
Well, first it has to be be issued in a regulated jurisdiction. So Genius Act in the US, MiCA in Europe, there are other regulations in other jurisdictions, and if it's being issued there, that's the right away logic of trying to request a stablecoin methodology. Of course, it has to be fiat-backed, because payment stablecoins or fiat-backed stablecoins are what most regulations across the globe, or almost all of them, actually support. So that's another requirement. And then you have to make sure that you are able to provide enough information about the underlying collateral, about the segregation of assets, and then answer a list of questions by a rating analyst around operational and cybersecurity and technology risks.
So, how important is it someone to get a strong rating? How are you viewing the algorithmic stablecoins? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that people would probably want to figure out how to get a good Moody's rating on this.
Well, that would be considered an advice which I can't give. And our methodology does not address algorithmic stablecoins. Okay. Neither does the regulations I listed do. They are mostly fiat-backed, so we are focused on fiat-backed stablecoins only. And how do you get a good rating is make sure that you are applying all the principles in the regulation, in the regulatory framework within the jurisdiction where you're issuing it. And then we'll be able to map that and see how credit risk, along with counterparty and technology risk, can be evaluated as a whole.
So I want to just make sure I'm understanding correctly. We are in the United States. We have the Genius Act here. The Act requires stablecoin issuers to hold 100% reserves in high-quality liquid assets like T-bills, cash, short-term government securities. You mentioned, the issuer also needs to be able to answer questions from the analyst. I mean, if we have a stablecoin in the United States that follows the rules of the Genius Act, is there a chance it is not able to be rated because it doesn't fulfill some other requirements?
Yes, there are criteria, there are key risk indicators, and then there are credit risk indicators which need to be evaluated. The analyst, upon collecting all the information, takes a call whether, or as a company and as a team or rating group, we decide whether a stablecoin can be rated using an existing methodology we have, which is stablecoin specific. But there could also be nuances in other methodologies based on the stablecoin structure itself that can decide whether a stablecoin can be rated or it cannot be rated, and what the reasons about not rating it are.
And we've only a couple of minutes left. You guys also announced the token integration engine, and which really is focusing on bringing credit analysis on chain. What does that do for the industry?
Great question. So we wanted to meet the market where they are. More and more market participants are actually trying to innovate and invent with blockchain technology. They are looking to issue digital assets. They are trying to understand the risks around issuing digital assets and the underlying technology. And for us, it was very important that we are able to assess those risks and then be able to provide the credit insights to the issuer or the issuance on whichever blockchain they sit. So we decided to work on and launched what we call token integration engine, or TIE. What it does is it is network agnostic. It can interact with any blockchain outside of Moody's ecosystem of issuer's choice or potentially investors' choice as well, or regulators at some point in the future. We launched it with a node on the Canton network. So we also built a node infrastructure which allows us to scale to other blockchains with a node. But there are other various ways of also interacting with the blockchain ecosystem. What is important is if a digital asset is being issued, we are now able to ingest required analytical information from the blockchain where the digital asset sits, evaluate that information along with off-chain data and off-chain models, and run tests around it and various scenarios to come up with a credit opinion. And then we are able to provide a new channel of distribution of credit insights, credit tracing, and assessments beyond our regulated Moody's.com website to a blockchain platform or a blockchain network of the issuer's choice, or networks of the issuer's choice.
All right, Rajiv, we are going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was the Global Head of Strategy for Digital Economy at Moody's Ratings, Rajiv Bamra. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren Racing. Great to see Hedera bringing together such an incredible group of ecosystem participants here in Miami. Hope you're enjoying HederaCon.
Jorgen, how are you?
Hello and welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from HederaCon in Miami. I'm Jen Sanasi, this is Sam Ewan, and we're joined by Colin Cunningham and Jorgen Owakanan. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. All right, a lot to unpack here, a lot of announcements going on. Colin, I want to start with you. Chainlink has an announcement today. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So we're excited to talk about the work that we've been doing with Euroclear, Swift, DTCC, specifically around Project Calm, right? And what we did in our role in this is what Chainlink has always done. We're sitting at the intersection of how do you get massive amounts of data that are sitting in the traditional financial system, how do you organize that, make sense of it, and then how do you get it on chain? That can't happen without partners like Euroclear. And so what the project was is we worked with 24 different financial institutions. And then what we did is we analyzed corporate action data that sits off-chain. We used AI models and then Chainlink's Oracle network to actually parse out that information, reach consensus, move it on-chain, and then distribute it. And that's what we do through the products that we build, the platform that we've built, and we've been doing it for 8 or 9 years now. So it's a really exciting time.
Before we dig deeper into this, Jorgen, can you just set the baseline for us? Talk to us about corporate actions and some of the challenges that have existed so far that you're working to solve.
So basically, we are a financial market infrastructure, and that comes with big numbers, 45 trillions of dollars of asset under custody, and we settle every quarter the equivalent of the world GDP, like more than a quadrillion. So, it puts in perspective a little bit the numbers there, and you can imagine everything we have to process and how STP it has to go. So when we think about reshaping the way the capital market work, not digitizing processes, well, that's typically the project Calm, because it's rewiring the way it works. And for once, combining AI and blockchain, showing the complementarity of both the systems, and it's part of, the reason the value-added services that we provide. So the collaboration here shows as well on top of that, we're not 4 years back now when everything was disruption, then suddenly it was about conversion. Now it's about partnerships, and partnership for specific reason. We want to scale. That's a multi-billion problem. That's something we're working on, and I think that's very important when it comes to important infrastructure like ours.
And Jorgen, just to go back to you for a second, and we've spoken before, I think at Chainlink's event, I think people still are underestimating the power of what tokenization and RWAs are going to mean to the industry. For a brand like Euroclear, as you're developing this, does it just keep unfolding all the opportunities that are coming out? And how excited are you getting to see what the true future of digital finance is?
So I think we have a responsibility towards our ecosystem to remain super focused on what actually matters. Our first platform did solve a major problem, which was liquidity. Yeah. Before, when you had a bond issued on a public blockchain, it was sitting idle until redemption. Since we managed to create digital twins between our DLT platform and our traditional rails, we have had unprecedented distribution and liquidity. Now, basically, we're trying to move at scale. What does scale mean? Our latest project in France, with Banque de France more exactly, is about tokenizing 100% of an asset class, which is called the new CP. It's a short-term commercial debt, which is actually the biggest one. It's more than 300 billion. So by Q4 this year, the platform will be live. It will be available for the ecosystem. We have received an overwhelmingly positive welcome of this initiative, because more of half of them have subscribed to it, and it's going to settle against the European Central Bank Pontes CBDC. So again, new things coming to production at scale.
Colin, one of the themes that have come out of today's broadcast has been security, safety. We spoke to Kraken's chief security officer earlier, and security is top of mind, especially on the back of these two big DeFi hacks that we had in recent months. I know that you've said the boring stuff is what keeps the money safe. Unpack that for us and talk to us about what institutions are concerned about.
Sure. So, look, the journey we've been on at Chainlink, we've worked our way up over the decade into the moment that we are now, right? And when we talk about what Jorgen's talking about, when you move at scale, when you move at speed, the first thing you have to have in place is standards, right? And so for us at Chainlink, we've always thought by putting our Oracle network, which is the largest and the most decentralized, to work, it's important to go through the laps and the procedures that the traditional financial institutions and traditional financial market infrastructure has in place for any company of any technology vendor from any industry. So for us at Chainlink, we've always prided ourselves on doing things the right way. And that's what happens in moments like this, in bear moments or in bull moments. The market's going to be watching and looking, and you have to be taking the steps within these financial institutions to talk to the compliance, the risk organizations, the security organizations. And so for Chainlink, we just passed over 30 trillion in total value enabled in our lifetime, or in the company's lifetime. We're plugged into over 2,500 different applications, and 97% of all market value that moves on blockchains is moving through or available to Chainlink's rails. You don't get to those types of numbers and that type of support and that type of ecosystem unless you've built financial market technology that the world's organizations can continue to rely on and continue to build on.
And I guess, Jorgen, on the flip side of that, what kind of questions and conversations are coming up when it comes to doing due diligence, and how are you talking about security?
So we have a purpose around innovation. And we say we innovate to bring safety, efficiency, and connection. But safety is the first word. And we sit at a very unique space, at the intersection between trust, regulation, and global markets. And part of the things that we like to do is to make life easier for our clients. So our first platform that was in production, we have changed the terms and conditions of Euroclear for the clients to be within the same ecosystem. So the trust they put in one institution is not dependent on a subsidiary or something else. We're offering the same unique context. The context they expect from us, the context our regulator expects from us, and that unlocks somehow scale, because we talked about quadrillions and trillions. You still have a lot of millions and billions out there in the blockchain world, and we really want to scale that to the next level.
And Jorgen, when you think of Euroclear's own business model, when settlement is happening in real time, when sort of the post-trade friction disappears, how does that benefit your clients and how does that benefit the firm?
So again, you have to think about the history of capital markets going back 60 years when we were created. And we were created because there were a lot of inefficiencies in the market, and we have been able to solve that through all the innovation, all the crisis, allowing the capital market to grow in a safe and gradual way. So I think safe and gradual are the key words. We work on improving every time. But I think we are at a unique position here where actually it might not be incremental, it might be exponential. And that's something that is quite exciting, but that requires a specific setup to be able to engage the full ecosystem. There's no point of being so much ahead if your clients and your ecosystem cannot basically follow what you're doing. So we're trying to bring everyone at speed and improve ourselves along the way to be able to meet at this intersection. So yes, it's going to be somehow frictionless at one point, but don't forget, we process the world's GDP every month, and that works fine.
And Colin, I'm not going to ask you for a price prediction, so don't worry about that. But I am going to ask you for a prediction. In a year from now, let's say we're sitting at HederaCon 2027, what's the conversation we're going to be having?
I think we're going to be talking about digital native instruments at scale that are secure for the first time, that are moving interoperably, not across blockchains, which I think is where the crypto or blockchain first mindset goes, but we're going to be talking about interoperability with traditional financial systems. I think that's the next avenue that we're headed towards, and I think the market, groups like Euroclear and some of the other larger financial institutions are really putting their weight behind this, and they're saying, look, we need to be, despite the hacks, right? We need to be looking at if we're going to take advantage of what it means to really transact on the blockchain, smart contracts, atomic settlement, programmable transactions, composable collateral. These things require that we take the next level of adoption. And the next level of adoption is going to take all of the organizations within these financial institutions that are not just what was previously innovation departments, right? But now it's the digital asset centers and the technology centers of all these businesses. It's going to take legal, it's going to take risk, it's going to take compliance, it's going to take regulatory. But I think the market is ready for that, and Chainlink's uniquely positioned for that moment with what we've built.
Colin, Jorgen, thanks so much for joining us at the desk. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, that was Chainlink Labs Head of Tokenization and Alliances, Colin Cunningham, and Global Head of Innovation and Digital Assets at Euroclear, Jorgen Wakkenein. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The need for a more interconnected world is fueling new decentralized technologies and new ways of doing business. Hedera stands at the forefront of distributed ledgers, where every interaction is not only trusted, but fast, efficient, and secure. While traditional blockchains struggle with speed and fees, Hedera's network settles transactions in under 3 seconds for a fraction of a penny. And the proof is in the numbers. Hedera is uniquely governed by a council of the world's leading institutions, ensuring transparency, trust, and decentralization.
Welcome back to CoinDesk Live from HederaCon 2026. Up next, we are joined by the two co-founders of Hedera and Hashgraph, Dr. Lehman Baird and Mance Harmon. I don't think we could have closed the show out with two better people. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks, I love to be here.
Of course. Okay, well, let's just talk about this. We've been at the desk for the last 2 hours. You've been here at the event all day. What are you walking away from this event with? Give us your takeaway. We'll start with you.
The energy of this event. People got so excited about the spheres and about the Clipper. Really excited. I love talking to these people. Everyone is really excited.
Yeah, man, what are you walking away with?
This event is different for us in that for the past HederaCons, we've had the community involved, but the council members themselves haven't participated in the way that they have today. We normally have a council meeting a couple times a year where the entire council gets together. It's face to face. We spend half a week, 2 or 3 days together. In this case, for the first time, we brought the council in, and the council was part of HederaCon. It's a milestone for us. It really reflects the momentum that we have with the council members and the work that they've been doing with the project.
And we've spoken to some of the council members who have been very complimentary, but also I think really love being part of the process with you guys. Mance, I was watching your keynote earlier, and you mentioned something I thought was really interesting, which was, when you guys were in the trenches, and everyone's just talking retail, and no one wanted to talk about enterprise, no one to talk about institutions. Now it's 180 degrees. Everyone wants to talk about institutions. Everyone wants to focus on enterprise. What does that feeling generate for you, thinking about, finally we sort of are getting the attention we deserve?
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, we have been well positioned for years for this moment in time. And now we're in a position where we're beginning to realize the fruit of all of that labor. You're right, from the very beginning, we've been focused on enterprise since 2017. We knew it would take longer focusing on enterprise than it would for retail use cases. Our products are not based on hype cycles. They are based on being embedded in integrated workflows, regulated workflows in many cases, and those business models have nothing to do with hype. And now that the market is maturing, that's becoming important in a way it hasn't been in the past. That's playing to our benefit.
Sam mentioned we've spoken to a few of the council members here at the desk. I think our audience watching at home is wondering, how do the council members participate in the council? How does governance work? Maybe just talk to us a little bit about the council.
So the council is now 35 people. The goal will be 39 eventually. The biggest names on earth. And they participate by meeting twice a year, actually we meet 4 times a year, but in person twice a year. They set the agenda of where we're headed. They set the prices on the system. They talk about what features will be rolled out. And then they get very excited about whole new projects like Clipper and like HashSphere and those sorts of things.
And I think it's important to say that the council members actually run the nodes in the network. We're a public network, meaning anybody can use it, but we're permissioned in that not anybody can run a node. Only the council members run the nodes, and that's really important for the kinds of use cases that we address.
Lehman, we heard from Eric earlier, who said, way back in the day, you had Clipper on a sheet ready to go in the roadmap, and it took this long to figure it out. Tell us about sort of the conviction that you need in order to think so far ahead and then finally build.
Oh, this is wonderful. So we have to have this. So there are blockchains in the world, public ones and now private ones like HashSphere, and they have to talk to each other because you have to be able to move tokens between them. But there are roadblocks, there are speed bumps, there is friction in that, and that means you have to worry about the liquidity on each blockchain by itself. We have a series of islands. There are some bridges between the islands, but you can lose your token. If you don't trust the people running the computers in the bridge, you lose your token. And if the bridge all goes down, your token can get frozen en route, which in some cases is equally bad. You can lose millions because your token was frozen for a day. Depends on what's going on. What you need is connections between blockchains where there is no bridge. There is no one you have to trust. Nobody can steal your token. No one can freeze your token. You just have frictionless liquidity. And that means then that the liquidity pool is all the blockchains in the universe, not just one. This is important for public ledgers. This is important for private ledgers. Private needs to talk to private needs to talk to public to public, and this is what Clipper is. It is completely secure and fast, and you never have to trust anyone in the middle. Your token can't be stolen by someone in the middle, which happens, as we know, and it can't even be frozen by someone in the middle. That's what the world needs.
Yeah, just a word. Another way of saying this is that Web3 today is the equivalent of where we were before the World Wide Web existed. Prodigy, CompuServe, AOL, walled gardens that had a bunch of users, but you couldn't easily move from one to the other. There was no interoperability. With Clipper, what we can do is tear down those walls, making it possible to move assets from platform to platform seamlessly, quickly, low cost, high security, and also make it possible for smart contracts on one platform to call smart contracts on a different platform. It is moving Web3 into the World Wide Web equivalent of where we used to be. Another way of saying it is Web3 with no borders.
Web3
right?
with no borders. It really is that. And so you'll, for example, be able to easily send stablecoins from one ledger to another and have them turn into another kind of stablecoin en route. And you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to buy something from your wallet on one ledger, you'll buy something that's on another ledger, you won't even notice that you're on different ledgers. Just like today, you click on links from one website to another with no boundaries in between. Totally different from the world of America Online and Prodigy or whatever. It's Web3 doing what Web2 has done from the beginning. No walls, no borders.
Now, Lehman, this is a problem you were thinking about years ago. Finally, the solution is coming to market. What's the next big problem you're thinking about? Is it quantum?
Sure. So quantum is important. We have this road plan. I can talk to you about the whole roadmap we have, but we will be rolling out post-quantum signatures internally and externally long before they are needed. We have the plans all on our website. We have facts about it. Parts of it are already done. We are carefully watching all this. This is absolutely something that we are watching and will be responding to, and we'll have it all done before it is needed. Yes.
Well, how big is the quantum threat? I mean, it's such a big narrative. It's something everyone is talking about, both public and permissioned chains.
Exactly.
How big is that threat, and what should folks be looking out for when they're building on a blockchain or when they're using a blockchain?
For today in ledgers, the threat is 0. Now, if you have secrets, you actually have a threat because someone could capture it today and break it tomorrow. But for chains, all you care about are signatures. So there's no threat today. Someday, we're going to wake up one morning, and the threat is they can steal billions or trillions of dollars. So the threat is nothing and will suddenly become a lot all at once. And so we are preparing to make sure we're going to switch to Falcon as soon as NIST gets around to making it a standard. They've chosen it to be a standard but haven't released it yet. We will be rolling it out as soon as they make it a standard. And so we will be ready before the day, Q day, occurs when suddenly everything is destroyed. We will not be destroyed.
That's one way to put it.
When we walked in, there's a beautiful McLaren outside. McLaren just joined the council. McLaren had a great showing at the race yesterday. It felt like a metaphor to me. It felt like there's an opportunity to say, hey, we are moving fast, but also we're succeeding in what we're doing. Tell us about the moment where we're at right now and where you think we're going in the next 12 months.
Well, when we started the council, we intentionally chose council members to span the universe of use cases. We didn't have just a bunch of banks or tech giants. We've tried to cover the entire market. And I think McLaren is a great example of one. So you'd mentioned that they recently joined. That's correct. We just announced that. They're an example of a customer-focused use case, a fan engagement use case. We also recently talked about FedEx joined. They're focused on supply chain and logistics. And then just last week, I believe, it was Accenture was announced. And Accenture is focused on agentic payments, agentic AI payments, and governance. So 3 fantastic new additions to the council that just sort of demonstrates the fact that Hedera is designed to be able to cover that entire range of use cases from, in these ways.
And just to follow up on that, you have fan engagement, you have supply chain, then you have sort of business solutions. All of those are places that the blockchain industry wasn't super excited about in the old days, and now they're all getting excited about that. So I think it really feels like the time is now, right?
I think exactly right. Of course, what's the big theme of 2026 is financial services related use cases, stable coins, tokenized deposits, etc. Hashgraph made announcements this week, today, about work that they're doing along those lines. And the council is going to participate in that. Many of the council members will be using those products and services for their use cases as well.
This is the future, and this is the one we've been preparing for, and now we're here.
All right, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for having us at the event. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, truly.
Thank you.
That was the co-founders of Hedera and Hashgraph, Dr. Lehman Baird and Mance Hartman. We've sadly come to an end, Sam.
Yeah. Well, it was a great day. It was absolutely fantastic. I think we were able to speak to so many wonderful people building in this space. I mean, having Mance and Lehman on to sort of end it is the right way to go. You know, the people who had the vision for what Hedera has become, and sounds like really had a long roadmap of how to get here, and it finally really arrived.
We had a lot of really quality conversations, and they spanned a really broad spectrum. You know, sometimes you and I will sit down and do interviews, and they all kind of feel like we're talking about some similar use cases. But I really like that we got a lot of diverse conversations in the 2 hours that we were here.
I mean, look, we were talking to Moody's, we talked to FedEx, but we also talked to the Kenya digital asset, people. We were able to talk to people who are making a difference in their business units, in their communities, and it's really what makes blockchain exciting. Nothing feels stayed. Everything feels like there is innovation at work, innovation in motion. McLaren is a great metaphor, as we were talking about with Lehman and Mance. I'm just excited for what the future is of the institutional conversation, but really, and I think they were hinting at it, the corporate business opportunity that's coming.
Yeah. One more point that stood out for me is, we like to often talk about this institutional adoption happening overnight or happening on the back of regulatory progress in the United States over the past year and a half. But what I took away from a lot of the conversations is they've been thinking about this since 2017, 2018. They've been experimenting. They've had some projects that maybe they've wound down and tried again. And so this isn't something that's just happened overnight. It's been a long road coming.
Yeah, let's not forget, it seems like a long time ago, but we had Scott from Coinbase and we had Patrick Witt, both who seemed very, very sort of excited about what's coming in the regulatory framing in the next couple of months, really.
Yeah.
And so when you think about what that unlocks for all the people we spoke to today, I think it becomes something very special.
Well, I can't wait to hear what Patrick Witt's strategic Bitcoin reserve announcement is going to be.
It's coming.
I hope it happens at Consensus. I don't know. He's keeping us on our toes.
He is.
All right, Sam. It's been such a pleasure co-hosting with you today. To all of you who watched from home, it was a pleasure bringing you this program from HederaCon 2026. We're going to be back again tomorrow, streaming all day from CoinDesk's flagship conference, Consensus 2026, from right here in Miami. So if you enjoyed today's program, log on, join us tomorrow. We'll be here all day, starting at around 9:15 a.m.
Something like that.
Sometime between 9 and 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you, Hedera, for having us here. We'll see you tomorrow.